Welcome to Time of Death. This video is for informational purposes and in no way meant to glorify or condone violence. In today's video, we'll be discussing the murders of Jerick Michael Thomas, who was shot and killed on Monday, January 25th, 2016, at the intersection of West 54th Street and 9th Avenue in Hyde Park, and Juan Ingram, who was shot and killed on Thursday, April 6, 2017, in the 7400 block of Crenshaw Boulevard in Hyde Park, according to LA County coroner records. Marquise Joseph was subsequently arrested and charged with the murders. The following is the evidence at trial. On the evening of January 25, 2016, victim Jerick Thomas was talking on the phone with his mother as he walked back from a liquor store near the corner of 54th Street and 9th Avenue. A few minutes after the call ended, the victim's mother learned he had been shot. Ms. Minor witnessed the shooting. She saw the victim walking toward her on 54th Street and a black male walking on 9th Avenue toward 54th Street with his hands in his jacket pockets. The man walked up to the victim, pulled out a handgun, and fired 3 to 5 shots at the victim, who fell to the ground. The shooter put his hands back in his pockets, turned around, and walked down 9th Avenue. Ms. Minor ducked behind some apartments and called a 911 emergency operator. She later gave a description of the shooter to a sketch artist. The victim died from a gunshot wound to the head. Bullet fragments found in his body were from a .38 Special or .357 Magnum revolver or from a semi-automatic weapon. Police did not find any bullet casings at the scene, which suggested the shooter used a revolver. Surveillance video showed a silver convertible traveling north on 10th Avenue to the intersection of 54th Street and signaling a left-hand turn. After the victim crossed 54th Street from the north side to the south side, the car's left turn signal stopped, and the car turned right on 54th Street and right again on 9th Avenue. The car stopped, and the shooter got out from the passenger door and walked north on 9th Avenue toward 54th Street. At the corner, the shooter shot the victim, who fell to the ground. The shooter then ran south on 9th Avenue and got back into the parked car, which fled south on 9th Avenue. On March 9, 2016, police officers arrested defendant in connection with an unrelated incident. Officers found defendant lying in the backyard in a cell phone approximately 5 feet away in a planter. Call records show that the phone was used on January 25, 2016, the day victim Thomas was killed, to call a number connected to Gregory Bradley's cell phone account. Records show that defendant's phone and Bradley's phone both accessed a cell phone tower close to the crime scene multiple times near when the victim was shot, indicating that both phones were close by at the time. Bradley rented a silver convertible from a rental car agency on January 19, 2016, and returned it on January 26, 2016, the day after the victim was shot. On April 6, 2017, victim Juan Ingram was standing outside of a liquor store at the corner of 74th Street and Crenshaw Boulevard with Mr. Pipion and another friend. 2 black men got out of a white car and approached the victim and his friends. One of the men asked whether they knew any 60s around the neighborhood, which Mr. Pipion understood referred to a criminal street gang. The victim said yeah, but he didn't associate with any of them. The man who asked about the 60s then shot the victim. The 2 men fled in a white car. The victim died of multiple gunshot wounds. Bullet fragments found at the scene and in the victim's body came from the same weapon, a .38 Special or .357 Magnum revolver. The police did not find any bullet casings, which suggested the shooter used a revolver. An anonymous caller to the 911 emergency operator said he heard gunshots at a liquor store on Crenshaw Boulevard. He said a white car with about 5 people in it drove away toward the freeway. The caller gave a license plate number that matched the license plate on a car belonging to Stephanie Dottie. Early in the morning on April 7, 2017, officers saw a white sedan matching the description given by the 911 caller parked in front of a marijuana dispensary 1.5 miles away from the crime scene. Dottie, Bobby Walker, and a female named Precious were in the car. Police impounded the car. Defendant's employee ID card was in the center console. Defendant's fingerprints were found on the car's exterior, on the driver's side, the passenger side, and the trunk. Meanwhile, on April 5, 2017, the day before the second shooting, police officers had stopped Dottie's white sedan. Derek Beeman was driving. Defendant, Dottie, and one other person were passengers. Defendant admitted to the officers that he was a member of the Van Ness Gangster Brims with the moniker Avenue Red. Using social media records, detectives learned that Derek Beeman took a bus to Oklahoma on April 11, 2017. Defendant was taken into custody in Oklahoma, and detectives interviewed him there on April 28, 2017. Defendant admitted he was from VNG's and said he was called Low Avenue Red, but denied going by Tiny Mad. At first, defendant denied knowing Dottie, but when detectives showed him a photograph of her, he admitted he knew Dottie and had been in her car. He denied knowing anything about the shooting on 74th Street and Crenshaw Boulevard. Dottie pleaded guilty to being an accessory to murder in exchange for a promise to testify truthfully in defendant's trial. Dottie testified as follows. She had been a member of a gang, but left the gang before trial. On the night of victim Ingram's murder, Dottie was in the passenger seat of her white sedan. Walker was driving, and Joseph was in the back seat with Derek Beeman, Dottie's cousin, and a woman named Princess. Joseph and Beeman were members of Van Ness, or VNG. They went to the liquor store to get some blunts. Defendant, Beeman, and Princess got out of the car. Dottie heard gunshots. When the three passengers got back in the car, defendant was holding a gun. Walker drove away and dropped off defendant and Beeman together. On a surveillance video, Dottie identified her white sedan, defendant and Beeman approaching the liquor store, and defendant raising his hand and shooting the victim. During her testimony, Dottie was reluctant to answer questions and sometimes took long pauses before answering. When the prosecutor asked her to identify defendant in the courtroom, she asked to take a break and said she feared for her safety and could get killed for testifying. After police arrested defendant for the Ingram shooting, they returned him to LA County. Detective Refugio Garza conducted a Perkins operation, which involved placing a confidential informant in defendant's jail cell to elicit incriminating statements about his involvement in the Thomas killing. The police recorded the 2-hour conversation between defendant and the informant, and the prosecution played the recording at trial. When defendant was placed in the cell, the informant asked him where he was from. Defendant said he was from VN. The informant said he was from East Coast. The informant said that he was 47 years old, that he was charged with being a felon with a gun, and that he had just done 14 years. The informant said he knew about a gang of youngsters right now from VN out there pushing lines. Defendant said, yeah, I'm one of them. Defendant said police brought him back to LA on a warrant for murder. Defendant said that a woman who was from Blackstones was telling on him, but that she was not credible because she was a dopehead. Detective Garza removed defendant from his cell and swabbed him for DNA. He told defendant he wanted to talk to him not about the Ingram case, but about that kid you guys killed up there on 54th and 9th. The detective showed defendant a picture of the silver convertible used in the Thomas killing and said police had the car. Detective Garza returned defendant to the cell, where defendant made incriminating statements about the Thomas shooting. Defendant told the informant, they can't book me on that one because that was last year. Defendant said he hoped he was going home because they ain't got nothing. That gun, I burnt it. The informant asked defendant about the car, and defendant said that it was a rental and that it was not in his name. The informant asked whether the person who rented the car would implicate defendant. Defendant said they don't even know me, and if they did, that's my big homie, and he not snitching. Defendant said he was worried about 74th and Crenshaw because everybody got booked and they were supposed to be telling. The informant asked defendant whether he wore gloves when he buzzed, and defendant said, I had a revolver. The prosecution's gang expert, Detective Alan Shaw, testified defendant went by the monikers Tiny Mad and Mad 4. Detective Shaw described defendant's 3 Van Ness Gangster Brims tattoos, including one with the letter CK, meaning Crip Killer. He also testified that Beeman and Bradley were members of the Van Ness Gangster Brims. Detective Shaw testified that both victims' killings occurred near territory claimed by the Rolling 60 Crips, one of the Van Ness Gangster Brims' primary rivals. Although none of the victims in this case were gang affiliated. Following the trial, the jury convicted defendant of 2 counts of second-degree murder and found true the gun enhancement on each count. The court sentenced defendant to 2 consecutive terms of 15 years to life on the murder convictions, plus 2 consecutive terms of 25 years to life for the firearm enhancements, for a total prison term of 80 years to life. Jerick Michael Thomas was 21 years old at the time of death. Juan Ingram was 54 years old at the time of death.